Good evening. This is Mark, and I'm coming to you from Baker's Green Acres. And I realize it's late, and it's a live video, but that's kind of the way things go. That's how I do things. I realize also that a lot of you, I've come into your homes, and you're probably wondering, who in the heck is this guy? Well, briefly, I'm a small-time farmer. I've only been at it for 15 years. I was professional military before this. I retired from the military. I was in the Air Force. I retired in '04. And I went into the farming business. And I didn't know anything about legal issues, Constitution. I didn't know anything about that. But the same thing that's happening to Hidden Creek Farm happened to me. And it wasn't done by the township, it was done by the state. And to make a long story short, we stumbled across the answer, and the answer was our very own U.S. Constitution. And we did prevail, not in the way we wanted to, but enough that we could keep our farm, we could keep our animals, and we could maintain our way of life. It cost us dearly, but every education has a price, So we swam out of it, and we're okay now, and I love what I'm doing, and I was able to come and help with this situation. But let me bring you up to speed on a few things, the how, the what, and the why, all right? So you know who I am. You're probably wondering why I'm doing this, or why a lot of the people who are involved in this are doing this. So let me bring you up to speed on a couple of things. Let me tell you about the timeline of this event and how it transpired. Lee and Crystal, the owners of Hidden Creek Farm, have been operating their farm for 5 years. They have a very nice, picturesque farm. You can go to their Facebook page and take a virtual tour, and you can see what it's all about. 18 acres, plenty of room. They get a phone call from the township on a Tuesday morning, and somebody at the township says, "We'd like to talk to you. Come on down to our offices." Crystal's kind of young. She's in her middle 20s or late 20s possibly, so she complies. She goes down there. They say to her that they don't like the fact that she's running a farming operation in the township. They don't like the fact that she's having a plant sale that's could possibly create a parking problem out on the road. And they said that, and by the way, you need a land use permit to do this, and it's going to cost you $50. Well, she was in a room with 3 strangers, closed door. She felt very uncomfortable. She got up, excused herself, and left. By the next day, she was summoned to the courthouse by a lawyer, left a message on her phone, and said that she had to be there in 10 minutes, right? She doesn't really know any better, so she went. She was scared. She goes down there. Well, she actually called me, and she said, "Do I have to go?" And I said, "I never heard of a lawyer summoning anybody, but maybe you should go find out what the deal is." So she goes down there. She waits for 2 hours, sitting with people in handcuffs, right, criminals, and then she is told by the judge that, well, you can't represent yourself because you're a limited liability company, and you will need to get a lawyer, and you have until tomorrow at 2 o'clock in the afternoon to get a lawyer. She leaves in tears. Right? What they're trying to do is they're trying to prevent her from having a Mother's Day plant sale. They're seeking an injunction to prevent her from doing that because a great number of people on her Facebook page, the Hidden Creek Farm, and I'm not sure what the number is, said that, yeah, I might come to that, right? So the township speculates that, hey, this is going to be a big event, and there's money changing hands, and we want our permitting fee. So by she gets home from court that afternoon. This is a Thursday, and there's a process server in her driveway, hands her 3 piles of paper, and it's a complaint from the neighbor who doesn't like her farming operation, a complaint from the township seeking an injunction for her plant sale, Mother's Day plant sale, or there, and another complaint from the township seeking to stop all operations, all farm operations. Okay? That's how the timeline went. A little jammed up, wouldn't you say? And so that's when I got involved. That's when I actually got involved. Now, I traveled down to their place, and I got down there Thursday evening, and those pieces, those complaints were sitting on the kitchen table. I went through them. There was several other people there that went through them, and so we verified a couple things. We verified that their operation was clean, dry, serviceable, good shape, not infringing on anybody's personal rights. It was picturesque, serene. The only thing I could smell was lilacs, right? It was a beautiful place. I was very inspired by it. So I made a phone call, okay? And the response to this injustice actually being done to these people by the township was swift, it was powerful, and they will find it's going to be relentless, okay? Now, let me explain why this is happening. I'm going to do this with a story that it's come to be part of me, right? And it can become to be part of you too. And this story originates, at least in my life, from a guy by the name of Lieutenant Colonel David Grossman, right? He gives motivational speeches. He was a Green Beret, Army, wrote several books, and I'm a big fan of his, right? The story goes like this. There are 3 types of people. And there's Dave Allen chiming in, so he knows this. There's 3 types of people in our world that we live in. There are people that are sheep, there are people that are wolves, and there are people that are sheepdogs. Now let's explain the sheep. The sheep are the average guy, gets up, goes to work, drives home, has a few beers, watches TV, goes to bed. Right? He's just going through the motions, right? Goes out and has a little fun on the weekends, right? He doesn't hurt anybody, doesn't want to hurt anybody, doesn't want to be a hero, doesn't want to be a zero, just wants to stay in the middle. Generally, sheep don't hurt each other. Once in a while, they'll accidentally bump into each other and scratch another, but they kind of look at each other like, who are you? That's the majority of the people. That's the majority of us, our sheep, right? Then there are wolves. And you might think, well, I'm a wolf. No, probably not. There are probably some people listening to this right now that definitely are, but the majority of you are not. Wolves live off the sheep. Wolves become experts at singling a weaker sheep out and devouring it. They don't produce anything on their own. They live off the sheep, right? If it weren't for the sheep, the wolves would starve, right? They're opportunists. A lot of times they're lazy. Most of the time they have no skills. And they're big advantage takers. And they have all of the traits of not a very nice creature, you know. They're sneaky. They lie. They cheat. They steal, right? Those are the wolves. And when you start to think about it, faces will come to your mind. You know who they are. And there's a third group. There's the sheepdogs. The sheepdogs kind of look like wolves in a way, to the sheep anyway. But the wolves know that they're not the same. The wolves know they're not wolves. And the sheepdogs know that they're not wolves. They also know that they're not sheep. Sheepdogs a lot of times don't really fit in with the sheep because the sheep are mostly afraid of them. But what the sheepdogs live for is to protect the sheep. Against the township. And some people, especially some of the sheep that are involved in this kinda, think it's a terrible thing, but they don't understand the mentality of the sheepdog. The sheepdog identifies the wolf and seeks to destroy, keep him away from his sheep. That's all there is to it. So I can think of several names on this, and I'm gonna name one of them because you see his name every place. But it's Randy Buechler. All right, and Randy, you're probably listening to me, or you will. All right, Randy is relentless at this, but Randy's gone through this too. And I think at one time Randy was a sheep. He just kind of went through life, trying to make it, until he got attacked by his township. They said, "You got to get rid of your sheep. You've got to get rid of your chickens because we say so." And they spent a lot of taxpayer money to humiliate him, to terrify him, and to bully him into doing what they said. That's when I met Randy, because I was going through my thing. I was overwhelmed when the state was coming after me. And I don't really remember helping Randy all that much. But Randy grew his fangs, and he became a sheepdog of the highest order. And what kicked off this thought process that I'm spilling out right now is I read a post that his wife put up. And I care deeply about him and his wife. I really care deeply about his family. I've spent a lot of time with his family. And his wife put up a post saying, sharing her heart, how terrified they were during the 2-year ordeal that their township was coming after them. And it was the same thing. They wanted to shut down their operation, and they wanted force them to give up all of their animals. And Randy fought the good fight and won, and his case had a lot to do with the Right to Farm Act being shaped so that it protects farmers and keeps them so that they can keep their livelihood going. So the critics of the ferocity of this response, I'm telling you, you don't understand it because you've never been handed paperwork from lawyers seeking to shut down your operation and seeking to change your way of life, and then you're forced to say, okay, what do I do now? If you ever complied with what they wanted and you went on to something else, when would you find something that somebody couldn't say, I don't like what you're doing and I'm going to stop you from doing it? What is that anyway? There's always going to be somebody that doesn't like what you're doing. So that's why the ferocious response towards the township. And it's not over yet. It's kind of too late for the township. The supervisor there actually called me and said, no, we're not suing them. I had the complaint in my hand. He was lying to my face. I mean, I knew that they were being sued. He said, oh, I didn't have nothing to do with it. I knew he did. He's a supervisor. And it ain't over yet. Now the people are fired up and they want his resignation. They want him to find something else to do. And they are justified. And I'm going to have to tell you one more story. I know this is kind of going long, but these are real live things. And as a sheepdog myself, I need to share with you that when a wolf is on the ground, you don't let him up. You don't. Because if you do, if you let him up, he's going to come for you again. But he probably won't come for you. He'll come for one of the weaker ones. They always go after the weaker ones. These people, because of their age, I believe, they were seen as weaker. But in this case, they came to me, and as a sheepdog, I will defend them. I took an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. That means for the constituents of the people. And I pledged to do that with my life. And there's many, many other people out there that did that. And whether you realize this or not, I've had comments on my Facebook, wow, you sure are brave doing this. That is not what this is about. This is about exercising your constitutional rights. No, by the way, I preach all the time, download the Bill of Rights. Download the Bill of Rights. Do it tonight, everybody. Use it for a bookmark. Put it above the toilet paper in the bathroom and read that Bill of Rights. It's just a page. It's 10 amendments to the Constitution, and they were put there so that it would be a common understanding of what the Constitution is about. All right, the freedom of speech, the right to own and bear arms, and so on. Okay, another story real quick. I was at a briefing one time, and it was about, and this is in 2015. This is after our thing had come to an end, and we were left with pretty much nothing, right? And we're kind of wondering what happens now. You know, the state is still collecting dollars from us. They still have a pile of lawyers and very powerful people in the attorney general's slot and the governor's slot know my name and don't like me very much. So what happens now? So I'm at this briefing. The guy giving the briefing was a man by the name of General Jerry Boykin. Jerry Boykin. Yeah, Jerry Boykin. And if you don't know who he is, he was the commanding officer that was leading the incident that led to the movie Black Hawk Down. And I don't know why they were doing that. I don't know what the mission was, but you've seen the movie Black Hawk Down. He lost a lot of people, and he lost a lot of equipment on that. And he was a colonel at the time that it happened, but he went on to make it to, I believe, lieutenant general. And, you know, you've got to hand it to a guy that has had it handed to him and then survived. I wanted to hear what this guy had to say in this briefing. There was a bunch of us military people sitting at the front of the room, 400 people in the audience. And I was 20 feet from General Boykin. He's 70-ish, I guess. And he's given this briefing, and he's talking about some of the problems that we have as a society here in America. He's going on and going on and going on, and I'm sitting there. I was probably closer to him than anybody in the room. And there was a man sitting behind me who is a friend of mine. He is a full colonel, or was. He's retired. Fighter pilot. And he interrupted the general and said, "Sir, what's the solution to this?" And this guy doesn't remember doing this, but he did. Because when he did that, interrupted a general mid-sentence, I got this feeling like I was going to turn inside out. Right? And General Boykin, I think he thought that I said it. And he pointed his finger, and he said, "Oath of office." And I didn't really know what he was referring to at the time. I just didn't know. And a lot of water has gone under the bridge in the last 4 years. And what I've come to understand that to mean is we as American citizens have an ace in our hand. Every one of us has an ace in our hand, but we don't know it. We don't know it because it's been marginalized. But that ace is the Bill of Rights. So, in this case, we've got a township supervisor, very low level, I got to tell you that, he's actually a personable individual, but he's not working for the people. He is working for the efficiency of the township. And I think in a lot of cases that it tramples people, right? You can see how this whole thing happened. The timeline was very compressed, very unfair. If he was going to be fair and serve the people who elected him, he wouldn't have done it that way. But he did do it that way, and he lied quite a bit along the way and all that. I did call him on the phone last week, and I said, are you sure you still want to go down this road? There is an out right now. You could be a hero if you want to. He said, no, this is what we're doing. I said, okay. Now, that position is an elected position. And per the Constitution in the state of Michigan, as all the other states, in order to hold that position, he has to swear an oath of allegiance to the U.S. Constitution. So that means he cannot violate anything that's in the U.S. Constitution. He cannot. If he gives an order that's repugnant to the U.S. Constitution, it is null and void. Now, I questioned him about that on the phone, and he said, well, the U.S. Constitution, people are running over that all the time. And I didn't say it at the time, but who's running over that? And who's allowing them to run over it? Well, I'm not allowing you to run over it, Tony. I'm not going to do that. And there's about 1,000 other sheepdogs out there that are not going to allow you to run over it. And maybe some of you are still sheep, not sheepdog yet, but here's what I need you to do. All right, here's the action item. Download that Constitution, the Bill of Rights to the Constitution, first 10 amendments, tonight. Go through them. Focus on the Fourth Amendment and the Fifth Amendment. The Fifth Amendment, Tony doesn't like to hear me talk about this, but it says the rights of the citizen. It says my life, liberty, and property, which is also my process, is protected under due process of law, right? The township has ordinances, right? And they have ordinance officers. Those are not laws. And if an ordinance is repugnant, that means it's 90 degrees out to the Bill of Rights, then it's null and void. You're not required. They shouldn't even have it on the books. I mean, if I was the township supervisor, I would take everything off the books that violates these people's constitutional rights. That's your job, Tony. But they don't see it that way. So there's a township meeting coming up in June. I believe it's on the 10th. So everybody that's going to attend that needs to have a copy of the Bill of Rights with them, right? And they're going to make sure that they understand what that Bill of Rights says. And then anything that you have to say to Tony, the township supervisor, should be preceded with, did you take an oath to protect this? Did you? You did. He had to. It's not just an oath, yeah, I will, and hand on the Bible. No, it's a signed document. That is the terms of employment. And now there's a group of people that want him removed. They want him removed. And they want leadership in the township that will run things constitutionally. The Constitution is your teeth. It's your freedom teeth. And if you let it go, if you do not hold their feet to the fire, then it is no good, because they're not going to do it. They operate freely outside of the Constitution. The Constitution is what restrains your government. And, we're coming into a time where there's going to be a lot of enlightenment about people that are in positions of power that have not adhered to your constitutional rights. These are your servants, not your masters, but they have acted like your masters. And this has gone on for about 40 years, maybe 50 years. Things are coming to a screeching halt. Now, what we're seeing at this township level is a microcosm, but you're going to see where it's going to apply across the board. And we're seeing it at the lowest levels now, and we have to understand what's happening. What is happening is we're returning to rule of law. So, for instance, the township says, if you want to have an event at your house, you got to pay for a special land use permit, and it's $50. And if you don't, we're going to drag you into court. And unless you've got $5,000 to retain a lawyer for a $50 permit, then you ain't going to make it. That's what's happening here. They want them to get a land use permit, and the farmers are saying, no, it's private property. Why do we need permission from you to have an event on my property to sell flowers for Mother's Day? It's almost like extortion. They want $50 of their profits, and they're saying no. And it's about time we all said no. I mean, these townships are raping people. I'm hearing horrible stories about this, and they're going to continue to do it until you push back. Another time, I'll tell you another story about a fellow that worked for me in the military that was actually from the Soviet Union, and I used to really grill him about what it was like living in the Soviet Union. And I can tell you what's going on with this is right on par with that. All right, so I need people to step up and do what needs to be done here, and do not stand down at this point. Do not say, oh, we're going over the top. We're too fervent in our battle against tyranny. No, tyranny has to be stamped out. There can't even be a flicker of light, because it will come back and burn brightly. This township has a very bad reputation for this type of thing. I want you all to know that none of the people involved in this, none of the sheepdogs, I mentioned Randy because he's a good friend of mine. A bunch of the other ones, I don't know if they'd want me to mention their names. It's just not my place. Nobody's paid. That's not it. We still aren't sure if we're going to take up a collection at this point. Well, let me back up on that. I'm going to brief later on that. This is just for this. I want you to understand why and who has come out, and the intention of the sheepdogs at this point. What the township is doing here is a tactic that's used in tyrannical regimes. All right, they single somebody out, they target them with some pretty unreasonable requests, and if those people do not comply, they make an example out of them. And who wants to be the example? Nobody does. But you've got to be thinking here, it could be you. And I know what it's like because it was me. And I know there was a lot of people around me that fear took hold of them, and they didn't even want to talk to me anymore. They thought it was going to happen to them. That happened to me. Don't let fear take root in your heart. Do not do that. And it will help you to read that Bill of Rights. Those are your rights. They are worth fighting and dying for. Dying for. And let me tell you something. In any fight that I've ever been in, I've usually prevailed because I will put everything on the table. Everything. And I've done that more than once. And that Bill of Rights is worth you putting everything on the table for. Because if you don't have that, you have nothing. And I'm speaking from experience being in overseas location, lots of them, where to speak out against local government would be a death sentence. They would haul you out of your house at night, and that would be over. But here in the United States, the First Amendment of the Constitution guarantees that I have the right to free speech. I can say whatever I want about whoever I want. If I slander somebody, well, there could be repercussions, for sure, slandering somebody. But I'm just speaking what is happening here. And here's fairly powerful people, at the township level anyway, They know people up at my township. Maybe they could get together and have me assassinated. No, it doesn't work like that in our country. It doesn't. At least not at this level. So I need you to find your sheepdog in this. Step up. We're going to need a lot of people at that township meeting. And this is going to send a message, all right? Who's next is the message. And I hope nobody's next. I really hope that these townships get their act together and say, well, the jig's up. We're going to have to pay attention to the oath of office that we took. And, you know, because they're getting paid good money. These guys have full-time jobs at the township, and a lot of them make it a career. And in this case, I don't think it's going to be Tony's career. I think he's going to need to be looking for something else, because he's a real topic of conversation there in Dalton Township these days. I've gotten quite a few phone calls about him, and they're not good. They're not good. He did have a chance. He could have backed out. He could have started flying right, but he did not want to do that. Okay, I'm going to end it here. Find your sheepdog. Smart from Baker's Green Acres. Anyone can farm.